Hey, welcome. Welcome back. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Susan, for co-hosting today. Appreciate it.
Hi
Great,
everyone.
great to see everyone. And we only have this one and two more left. And then we finished our longest running book study, and I can't believe it. So many people are really returning, and if you're like me, some of this stuff is really good. It's not as good as a lot of what we've seen. And this week, Susan and I were just talking that it looks like there's a lot of Sanskrit words this week that we get to sort of look at or just remember the definition of the Sanskrit words. And we're going to have a hard stop at one today because, and I'm just going to dash right out, even if we're not finished, if we're in the middle of something, as I have a commitment with the 7 day online I am retreat with Dan Schmidt, and I'll also put that in the chat. So if anyone would like to join that, you can check it out, see what it is. It's 7 days and it's rigorous. It's really a 7 day intensive. It's the self-inquiry that Dan Schmidt does with awakentheworld.com. And I'm one of the facilitators over there for all 7 days. So it's pretty it's uniquely rigorous for an online event. It's 5 a.m. in the morning till like 10 o'clock at night, and it's a lot of meditation, and then some sound healing and some chanting and different movies that you'll see, but mostly the self-inquiry. There's almost 300 people that are registered that will have self-inquiry, where you'll have another person, just like you see Susan and I right now, only there won't be anybody else there. And Susan or I would say to each other, tell me who you are. And then quiet, no words, nothing else, no follow through, just tell me who you are, and it's silent. And then the other person reports what is seen by the witness. And that's on day more like day two or three. But in the beginning, it's just you say, well, there's a sensation in the face, there's a thought about my dog, or there's a thought about that kind of a thing. So I'm just giving you kind of a little bit of a glimpse of what the online 7 day online retreat is. It's mostly to exhaust the mind from being involved, and so that the only thing that remains is the witness. That's really the crux of it. And thanks for being here today for this book study. So, Susan, we have what is the effect of renunciation? What do you
Yes.
think about that?
So he says renunciation is usually considered as a means to self realization, but its effect is just the opposite. So if you're going to be involved in practices to renounce the self, then that means that you have a belief that you are a separate self. And so immediately what you're doing is strengthening the belief in being a separate entity in order to then renounce it. So it's having the opposite effect of what you actually set out to do. He says, when you renounce an object, you attribute more concreteness and reality to it than when you're indifferent to it. And we can think about that in terms of thought as well. If you think, oh, in meditation, for example, I don't want to think, I want to stop thinking, which some people do, approach meditation like that. All we're doing is making the thoughts my thoughts and making them more real rather than just losing interest in them. If thoughts come, they come, so what? We don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of what happens when we start the spiritual path, isn't it? We have the mind is constantly trying to trick us into thinking that behavior modification will make me more spiritual,
Yes.
right? All the time.
Yeah.
A new idea will come. Oh, that's it. If
Yeah.
I'm celibate, I will wake up. Oh, that's it. If I'm a vegetarian, I'll wake up. Oh, that's it. What's he doing? Oh, if I do what he or she are doing,
Yeah.
it's just this constant barrage of renunciatory kind of
Yeah.
behavior changes that we think will. Now, the mind is the thing that's interested in awakening, and it never will.
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of in the Evolve book group yesterday. We were talking about there was a kind of quote, a joke in it that Angelo DeLillo had put there, and it was about monks copying old transcripts of scriptures and not having, making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And the punchline of the joke was that the monk, having consulted the original text, was crying. And they said, "Why are you crying?" "Because it didn't say celibate, it said celebrate."
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but to your point, that's yeah. Um,
Yeah.
the mind thinks up all these things that it deems to be spiritual. That if it did, it will wake up, which is yeah. And
Yeah.
it just makes it, as he says here, it proves that instead of proving the unreality of the world, it makes it more real and frightful.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see
Yeah.
where aestheticism and stuff come from. That you go and sit in sackcloth and ashes. You renounce the body, all of that sort of stuff. All of
Yep.
the practices that have
And the Buddha did it before he found the middle way. And of course, Ramana spent his whole life doing it. And then I think he sort of gradually, as he began, he spent how many years did he not speak? Was it 10 years or something?
something like that. Yeah.
And he, later on, I think you develop well, first of all, the once someone's taking care of you, if someone wasn't taking care of Ramana, who knows what would have become of his body because he was in that state. But it, it seems like some people just have this mystical thing, this thing happen that goes into this state and they never come out.
Mm.
That has happened to a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not something, I don't think it's not something really to try to attain
No.
for most people.
Yeah, and that that can be quite off-putting as well to people entering the path, because sometimes the mind says, "Oh, don't go any further than this because then you're going to end up like those people." You know, even Eckhart Tolle, sitting on the park bench for 2 years or whatever, that can be quite scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think then that 442 kind of speaks to this as well. Saying about how the Upanishads where you had to approach the Upanishads as a formal teaching, but the point that I think is really important is it was primarily only for those to whom it was particularly addressed, and secondly, for such others who could not understand anything higher. And I think that's really important, that when we hear teachings, especially when we've got so many YouTube videos and so on of teachers now in dialogue with people, that all of these are they're not general, they're answer is arising in response to the question of that particular person who's asking. And sometimes it can be extrapolated generally, but it's important to remember, I think, that that teachings can be particular to the where the person's at. I think that's kind of what's being said there about the differences of viewpoints in the Upanishads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here, teachers, they seem to be contradicting themselves, but they're actually not contradicting themselves. It's just they're meeting the person where they're at.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Francis Lucille is famous for this.
yeah,
He's famous for having a specific statement for your question, but it's not, and then people come back and say, well, you said such and such over there. And he goes, well, that was just for
yeah,
that particular question.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like how he says the answers come fresh out of God's oven. We don't want stale bread. We want it fresh from God's oven.
That's good.
Yeah.
He said, oh, this next one, 443, is quite a story. It kind of shocked me when I first read it. Why did Shri Kumarilla Bhatta reject the offer of Sri Shankara? And it goes on and says that Kumarilla Bhatta was a karma. Man, I can't really say these. I'm having trouble with the K's.
Yeah.
Matha, and had a guru. Kumarilla Bhatta was a Kamatha and had a guru who followed the Vedic path. He
Yeah.
followed the traditional path, and had risen well beyond opposites, beyond virtue and vice. The only sin he had consciously committed was deceiving his Buddhist guru.
I thought that was a
Really?
bit of a contradiction that he had
Pardon me?
gone beyond virtue and vice, but he had deceived his Buddhist guru.
Yeah,
And
that,
then he
that,
thought that setting fire to himself was a good idea.
sounds like the guy was in trouble. He was a little bit in trouble.
A flaming pile of paddy husk.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. And it also looks like he watched himself burn for a while.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
he was quite calm and serene, even in the throes of death. Yeah.
What a waste.
He was able to stand as the disinterested witness even during the pangs of death. He must indeed have risen to the ultimate truth. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he sounds like he did. Uh, and yet it's not a very good example
Yeah, I don't know.
because I mean, it's an example of what, what one can do that's not, it realizes they're not this, or maybe he was possibly in a state because it doesn't sound like he was realized,
I
really.
don't I don't know. I don't understand the
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
suppose it's just a cultural thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. You remember, I mean, back in the old days, people used to try to beat the sin out of
Yeah,
themselves or
yeah,
something,
yeah.
you know?
Self-flagellation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it says, having transcended the opposites of virtue and vice, pleasure and pain, etc., and being able to stand as the disinterested, who's that?
Who's what?
Is that is that me? That's
I
not
did.
me, is it?
I didn't hear anything. What did you hear?
Oh, you don't hear that?
No, no, no.
Oh, that's
Everyone's
weird.
shaking their head.
Okay. Uh, being able to stand as the disinterested witness even during the pangs of death. He must indeed have risen to ultimate truth. Okay, you said that.
Yeah.
Uh, Thus, standing as truth himself, he did not stand in need of it again from Shankara. Therefore, Sri Shankara was respectfully sent to his foremost disciple, Sri Mandana Mishra, for a spiritual duel, as desired by Sri Shankara himself. I don't know what all of this is is about. It sounds like they were kind of screwed up.
Well, I suppose the kind of relevant part is any path, if followed with sincerity and earnestness, even beyond the apparent opposites, takes one to the right ultimate. So I suppose
Yeah.
even yeah.
Yeah.
And all those paths, devotion, Vishista, Advaita, and Dvaita, are all dualistic paths. But even those followed, as he said, with steadfastness, with an eye on the Sat Chit Ananda, take you to realization.
Yeah. I don't know what Jenny Sheehan said. What is spiritual duel?
I
I
thought a kind of debate, Jenny. Like I wasn't thinking it was muskets at dawn. Like, do you think a kind of debate, some kind of spiritual, like, yeah,
Yeah, maybe it was a duel. I mean a debate.
a
Yeah.
debate? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable. Like a philosophical
Uh huh.
exchange
Uh
of
huh.
ideas. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. The choice of words cracks me up. That whole 443, I just thought, why is that there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
Must be
oddball.
something in that we're not getting. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, it starts off with the guy burning himself alive.
Yeah.
So it has a uh, okay. So 444. Oh, before we get too close to later on or the top of the hour, we're going to have a hard stop at 1 so that I can do that um, exit. 444 says, why is a smile emphasized in meditation?
Yeah. So I liked this that you're not looking at the name and the form. You're not contemplating, because they're talking about the Ishta Diva. So you're not contemplating the physical form or any kind of form, that you're looking beyond the form to the consciousness, to the reality of that the smile is the symbol of the reality. So I felt it was like it's almost like saying namaste to someone. If you smile at someone and say namaste, you're not looking at their form, you're greeting the divinity in you as greeting the divinity in them. I thought it was on the same kind of lines as that.
Yeah, yeah. And also I mean, I thought of two things when it uses the word smile. A smile is interesting because somehow, and I don't know how this works, but somehow a smile brings an energy of of invitation. It's an invitation of joining, and it's an invitation of connectedness. Somehow, you try it. You go out in public, and you smile at someone, they can't help but smile back. It's like somehow there's a transmission that it occurs energetically, and it moves you instantly to this other realm of communication in a smile. So that happens. That happens in any part of the world, happens all the time, and it's interesting in that it elicits someone to connect with you there, and they do.
Yeah. Rick said, the smile is a subtle hint. Authentic meditation is not a doing. It would be more accurate to describe it being. It's not what we do, but what we are. I suggest a natural smile simply reinforces this fact. It requires absolutely no effort to be what we already are. This natural, relaxed, and complete openness, no anxiety or tension, is represented by a smile. Not a Hollywood or red carpet smile, but perhaps a subtle but authentic smile that represents everything is already perfect.
Nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
kind of smile that a baby gives you, isn't it? Or a small child. That
Yeah.
natural openness. Yeah, and
Yeah.
some Buddha statues display a very subtle smile. It's a universal and practical pointer. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
But
you.
as long as it's not doesn't go sexual, a smile with other people, it is very innocent and very revealing to the true nature that's behind it. And I love it. I love how a smile really breaks the ice with strangers and doesn't have to be anything more than that. All of a sudden, there's a friendliness that's invited in.
Yeah,
Yeah. So going back to this to the Ishta Deva, I was
yeah.
thinking also about something that I read about from the Ramana Maharshi's teachings, where he has been said to say that the image of Aranashala is enough, held in the mind is enough to suspend the ego or to destroy the ego. Now, I'm not sure I get that in that, especially in light of what Rick just offered a few minutes ago and what you said, Susan, in that it's not the it's not the act, it's what is beyond the image. And yet I heard or I read something about Ramana saying that the image of Aranashala brings you to the experience of the Shiva, the
Mm.
destroyer of the ego. And I don't know how those two, maybe they say two different things. It sounds like there's a contradiction there.
Maybe it's one of those things that, that's for some people.
Yeah.
Maybe for some people. But I,
Well, Aranashala does have a magic about it. There's no question in my mind. When you look at Aranashala, and actually it has a pervading kind of an influence on you physically. Can't explain it, but I watched it happen to me and everyone I was with. It was last year. It was amazing. And so there is something there. And I've also been watching films, a lot of documentary films of people that are saying, I don't know how this works or why it is, but somehow Aranashala, when I went to visit Ramana, it had an effect on me, and it just did. It did for me, and it's pulling me back. I'll be heading back up there next month, and looking forward to that.
yeah. Rick just said post glimpse. A wide variety of pointers can immediately take you home. Post glimpse.
Okay, that's cool. I think we're going to talk more about that in a minute on one of these discourses. It says, let's see, if you hold fast to the consciousness expressing itself through the smile, you are led on to the experience of the real self in due course. That's it right there. There's like this energy that goes with it. So it's not the smile. The smile might be the thing that opened, that opened the connection up. 445. How is the yogin's approach to the truth different from the jnanins?
Yeah, this was one of the ones that had a lot of kind of technical Sanskrit terms, and also they're kind of comparing the yoga path to the Sankhya path. I looked a few things up, but yeah, I didn't get a lot out of this, I have to say. And basically, in the Sankhya path, it thinks that the universe came from the union of Prakriti, which is cosmic material stuff, so some kind of stuff, and Purusha, which is cosmic energy. So the union of those, so kind of like Shakti and Shiva, you know, and it's talking here about the difference between them. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, yeah, as you I mean, it's kind of philosophical
Uh-huh.
exchanges that i- this audience, sometimes you're in an audience that's really intellectual and really philosophical, and this looks like it's speaking to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's talking about the prakriti, the cosmic energy,
Uh-huh.
and
Purusha. Purusha is the cosmic energy. Prakriti is the the stuff, whatever that is. I wrote the words down from whatever I looked up. Basic cosmic material was what the definition that I looked up, and the Purusha is basic cosmic energy.
okay,
So, yes, and in that philosophy, the Sankhya philosophy, that they believe that the universe was created from the union of those two things, the union of energy and matter, I suppose, some
yeah,
kind of cosmic matter. But I think, there's one kind of bit in the middle, I suppose, where he says yogins always strive to visualize through the mind an ideal set by the mind itself. It cannot be denied that every object perceived is lit up by consciousness. Therefore, if the yogin claims to visualize the truth in the same manner rather, he must certainly light up the absolute likewise. But with what is it to be so lit up? Like, how do you light up? How do you light up consciousness? What else is there? There is nothing else. No, that's never possible. Therefore, yoga by itself can never take you to the absolute. But it's not, I mean, Rick said here, the context isn't provided. Like, when he talks about yoga, what yoga is he talking about? What's actually meant by that? Whose yoga? There are many different yogas. So I have no idea what he meant. And then he said that on the jnana path, the disciple has been told by the guru already the nature of the absolute. And therefore, when he meditates upon that, he's not visualizing something. It's not coming from that direction. It's all coming from the other direction. So then there's the opportunity for the mind to merge, for realization to happen. Yeah, and he says even some jnanins after realization take to meditation as a habit, but ultimately they have to give up that too because they're still trying to achieve a state. And I thought that was the only kind of bit that I took from that whole section, that if we are meditating to achieve some kind of state, then obviously states come and go. That's not the absolute. That's not the
yeah,
unchanging reality. Yeah.
right. Yeah, what's interesting, as I was looking up some of these terms, I decided to look up the age of Upanishads,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only 4,000 years old. So where we've come in 4,000 years is amazing. To have the understanding to go from not understanding, not having any structure or philosophical uh, ground to speak from, to having millions and gazillions of pages of content.
Yeah. Yes, Susan just said the same that I said. For me, the second to last paragraph was most meaningful. Trying to attain a state limits the absolute to a state. And Linda said the yoga any style would be the progressive path, completely different from what Krishna Menon teaches.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I mean. Jenny is always saying this isn't for us. This
Yeah.
this isn't for the path that we're
It's,
on.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet there's nothing new under the sun, right? Yeah, well, there's nothing new under the sun, and yet there's clarity that's coming through. Really. I mean, there's this stuff we couldn't understand 50 years ago, even. The modern, I mean, how many millions of people understand this now? It's not new, but it's new to me and to many of us. So, are we on 446
We are.
from
Yes. From
Putti to the absolute?
yeah. And Triputi just means a three-part thing. So from three parts to one.
Yeah, like the Trinity.
Yeah. So knower, know. I mean, it's self-explanatory what it says. Knower, knowing, and known. So those being three things: something that knows, the act of knowing, and the thing known. So the subject, the object, and the verb reduced to just the knowing and the thing known, reduced to just the subject, just the one thing, just the one. And the same with everything, the not just knowing but seeing, the seer, the seeing, and the seen, one thing. The hearing, the hearer, the hearing, the heard, one thing. Everything just collapses to the one thing. There's only one thing.
Yeah. And also it goes in reverse and it's everything. It's reduced and then it's reversed to the all.
Yeah.
It's consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we go to
No idea. Absolutely no idea about that one. If anyone's got anything to say, then please speak now. I do, yeah.
I think he's clearing his throat and they put an A in there.
And then I loved how at the end, source of quotation uncertain. I do, yeah.
Funny. All right. Well, we can skip that one unless someone has something else to add. Aham. It was it's just just a word for I, it looks like.
Yeah.
How is reality in the objective world established? This is pretty good.
This is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's giving two ways that the objective world can appear to come into existence. Well, I actually thought So by examining the objective world in an ascending order from gross to absolute, first of all. So when the gross is examined, so whenever, like the body, for example, is looked at, then any object is just seen to be a thought. That our experience of the body or the world is a thought form, because all we know of anything is what we perceive with our senses, our bodily sensations or thought. That's all. That's all. We don't know anything else other than that. That's our only experience of the gross realm. So when the gross is examined, it's reduced to mere thought forms. And then when thoughts are looked at, where does a thought appear? Appears in consciousness. So from looking at our experience of the gross, realizing that that is only a thought form, and then seeing where a thought form comes from, then we see that everything is consciousness. Thus the world is nothing but the absolute. So that's kind of going from the bottom up kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
he goes in the other direction. Let me just read what Rick said. I suggest his answer here is worthy of considerable contemplation. Yeah, I agree. Of course, there are multiple ways this understanding can be articulated. I suggest that prior to a thought having an object, no thought, there is only a mere sense of knowing, raw awareness without an object, then the birth of existence to include space-time, causality, thought, senses, objects, etc. So then number 2, he goes the other way. He starts at the absolute and comes down to the gross. So you start from that point of view. I consciousness apparently splits itself into 2, thought and generic thought and consciousness. And that I felt that's sat and chit, existence and consciousness. At this stage, there is no bondage because there is no other thing in existence. There's only I am and I know I am, existence and consciousness. And then he says, there's no other thing except yourself and thought, and your experience is only that you know. You see yourself as thought. It cannot be called a thought either, because from the standpoint of consciousness, there cannot be anything other than consciousness. So it's kind of getting back to the same place from the other direction. A thought, to be a thought, must have an object. Therefore, thought can exist only in mind's realm. There has to be thought of something for it to be a thought. In the plane where the generic thought is supposed to exist, consciousness alone obtains to provide an object to thought, but it's called a thought only when looked at from down below, so from sort of bottom up, if you like. This generic thought, which is not thought by itself, next begets innumerable other thoughts, and thus the world comes into existence. So it's like the Tao, isn't it? That which can be named is not the eternal Tao. But when it's named, then all the multitude and diversity of apparent objects come into existence, but they're nothing other than consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same. It's the looking at it from the non-dual perspective, or looking at it from the progressive perspective. You're looking at it in the 2 different directions.
But I think more from the starting point of consciousness. If a teacher says to you, what you are is consciousness, and then you start to do these experiments to see, well, is that true actually? Is this actually true? Like, as he says in the next page, that this is kind of how it comes into apparent manifestation. You start with the unconditioned I, that there's, that what you are is consciousness. And then the first emanation, the first kind of movement away from that is I know I am. That's the sat and the chit. And then the second emanation is where there are particular thoughts. That's when time and space and causality apparently come into being. Immediately you become the thinker in that tripart thinker thinking thought. Like, you've now separated out from just having been just consciousness to the knowing of consciousness, to now you're a thinker and a perceiver. And then the third one, you become the perceiver in a world of sense perceptions. So now sense perceptions have come. And then in the fourth emanation, now a doer, a gross world of bodies. And you can see how, you go back, the road to liberation is going back. It's like, I'm not the doer. experimenting. Am I the doer? Am I the body? Am I the one doing these actions?
Yeah.
Is all I am a perceiver? Are my sense perceptions an accurate representation of whatever's out there? And we can't even know that. So this, it starts to loosen this identification as a separate person, and then the thoughts. Do I even choose my own thoughts? And it's not hard to see that you don't. And then the awareness. I know I am. Like we come back to that, don't we? I know I am, and then back to the absolute
Yeah.
unconditioned I, which, yeah.
Yeah. This is the almost a picture of the descent into the identification of this of the separate self, and then what you just described is the ascension the other direction.
Yeah, Ramana Maharshi said, go back the way you came. And that's what that means.
Yeah.
That's the way we came. And it's, I can really sort of see traces as well of the story, the myth of the Garden of Eden in this as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's like, the birth of duality, the knowing, first of all. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rick
Yeah.
says the backward step, a continuous regression toward nothing, the absolute source.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot in that, 448.
Yeah.
Amy said, the carpet rolls out and the carpet rolls back up. The miracle cuts through the egoic mind in the holy instant and takes us straight through to the I am.
Yeah.
Love that, Amy.
Yeah.
Going back to what precedes the I am. Yes, that the unconditioned I precedes the I am. The absolute precedes I am.
Hmm.
That's the first split. That's the first part. That's what Regina calls the first principle of God.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, this is really something that you can chew on. You can really get into the into the understanding the philosophy and also the levels of awakening, and then reversing that. And what I feel is the the thing that causes that reverse to happen from the descent into identifying as the person is the desire to know. The desire, the initial desire has to be first, it might just be curious. Is that true? Is that real? But then it becomes this intensity of desire to know. And then you start going in reverse, hopefully. You don't go deeper.
I don't think we have a lot of choice, actually, Bill. Honestly, the more I go on in this, I don't think we've got any choice. Why we're here and other people are down the pub, I have no idea. Like, why are we here? Why are we interested in any of this stuff? No idea. It's grace. It's an absolute. And also, I'm also more and more coming to see that there's no hierarchy here. This is not better than the people down the pub. It's all the way consciousness is expressing, and it's. I think that we can get into this. This idea perhaps that this is a more worthy or noble pursuit than what other people are doing, and more I'm thinking it's not. It's all just consciousness doing its thing.
We do have an idea that we are bettering consciousness, do we not? Do we
Yeah,
not
which is,
have this idea that we think, well, this is now spreading,
yeah,
it's getting,
yeah, but that's completely egoic, isn't it?
yeah,
Look at
yeah.
me, I'm helping the awakening of the world. Good for me. That's the ego.
Well, it does feel pretty good though. It does have a feel good measure to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It feels better than a hangover or a drug addiction.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amy said, sometimes suffering is the perceptual turning point, but Susan is right. It's all done through us, not by us.
Yeah.
Rick said, sincere interest or earnestness is the key ingredient. Without it, being exposed to the very best teachings will have little value. Yeah, and I know that in my own life, in years gone by, reading things and just thinking, what's that? Now reading them and thinking, oh, wow, hearing things that even, for one person.
And also, I mean, look at I have to say, I'm a half glass full
Kind of.
experienced person. It feels to me like consciousness is coming online of itself. And why not? I mean, the consciousness is conversing about itself to itself right here in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
This is pretty
Down the
cool.
pub too, Bill. Down the pub too. Consciousness is conversing to itself. It's just not known by the vehicles.
That's the difference, though. It's not knowingly conversing with
Yes.
itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amy said we're spiritual homing pigeons.
right.
Eve
Yeah,
said, I think the feel good feeling is the shining of your own self after the clouds start to disperse. Oh, I like that, Eve.
yeah, yeah.
If anyone doesn't consider themselves as a glass half filled, run, said Rick.
That's right.
And
There's no
Susan
glass.
said, there's no glass.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I've been down to the pub. I've been to the other side, and I
Yeah,
just,
and all that.
the difference is profound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Drunk on spirit. That's right. That's what they asked. That's what yeah, somewhere in the New Testament. Is he drunk? Yeah, drunk. Drunk on spirit. Okay. Well, let's look at being and are we on 449?
We are, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Being and Vedanta.
Yes. There's a subtle thing here, I think. So, being, which is by nature unmanifested, seems to manifest itself as a mental being in the mind's realm. And I think there's a subtle little trap where we can think we're being. We can think, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can, yeah, and equally feel that we're being. Like there's a difference between being and the thought of being and the feeling of being.
Yep. It's very subtle. And it, it and I know that I have been fooled by me in that way. Fooled by the feeling is it's a false it's a narrative that the mind gives to the experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Rick put it really well there. He said, we are nothing. So what we really are cannot be perceived or conceived. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It can't be thought and it can't be felt. And we can kind of trick ourselves that it can, that what we are thinking and feeling is our true nature.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick.
It's it's really subtle right there. Because and how many times have you heard people say, "Well, this is my experience. It's my direct experience." Well, it's impossible to investigate. Uh, you can only know for yourself, and it's just you. It's you and you that that investigates with contemplation. And really, where does that take place? Is it in the thinking mind or is it just in quiet contemplation. Because if it's in the thinking mind, now you've given it. Now it's now it's in it's in the realm of thought.
Yeah. And that's where words break down. We, Rick's saying here what we commonly call the absolute precedes being or not being. There's nothing that can be said about it. It has no attributes, commonly referred to as the void or emptiness.
Yeah,
Or the darkness, even. In the Tao, it's referred to as the darkness.
yeah. Well, there's two clues in the Course in Miracles in the text that lead you to the same understanding. It's called the quiet answer, where all things are resolved in the quiet. So there's that. So there's no words there. There's no thoughts. And then the second place is that the borderland is where the illusion or thought, feelings, anything time-based, lays side by side next to the truth, and only the truth remains.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take those two teachings, those are pointers to this same understanding.
Yeah. And then he points back really to what we discussed in 448. It's for this that the help of Vedanta is sought. Vedanta does its task most wonderfully by proving that there never was a thought in existence and that all that ever existed was pure consciousness.
That puts a nice bow on it right there.
Yeah.
Everything is, that's why meditation isn't a doing, it's a being. Because if you're just being, the mind can't do it. There's nothing to do. What does Dave say? Rupert has often said that being, knowing itself, is the only knowledge we have that is not filtered through the mind and not in subject-object relationship.
Yeah. Being knowing itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And the highest form of teaching is to say nothing,
Yeah.
right? Just to,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is just a total waste of time.
It's fun though.
It is
It's a
fun.
fun,
Yeah.
it's a fun waste of time.
Yes. It's a fun waste of time. Absolutely.
Hosts,
Yeah.
I'd better get back to.
Okay. We have about 6 minutes left. We have plenty of time. We have just one more.
Okay. Yeah. So the easiest approach towards understanding the truth is for it to be based upon your fundamental experiences. And this is what Francis is all about, isn't it? Conducting these experiments in your own life, examining your ordinary experiences as a layman, gradually eliminating from them all extraneous elements, leaving only truth behind. This method alone takes you to the truth without any effort or doubt. For example, examine what happens during your most ordinary perceptions, thoughts, or feelings, and prove that in every case it's your own Atma, the self, that is experienced as consciousness or peace. And I think that that's an even higher burden of proof than Francis offers. Because Atmananda is saying here, prove that it is the self that's experienced as consciousness. Whereas Francis says, do you have any evidence for your belief that consciousness is limited to the body or the mind, to this? Is it limited? Can you find any evidence? So you don't have to find positive evidence that, oh, this is the self, I know this, I've proved this. You just have to have no evidence that it's not, which is a much less burden of proof, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we can conduct these experiments in our own life. Is consciousness limited to this body mind? Well, that's relatively easy to see that it's not. But it's harder to see, to prove in every case, in every perception, that it's not Susan perceiving, it's universal consciousness. That's a bit harder. Do you
Well,
think?
yeah, that's why it's harder to swallow the pill that we don't choose anything. We don't choose our thoughts
Yeah.
because you can't you can easily verify that. Yeah, yeah, I don't choose my thoughts. Therefore, what happens that I choose? Nothing.
And that's such a great example to apply this particular teaching to. You know, to examine your ordinary, to actually take that as an experiment and examine your own experience. Like, look at your thoughts. Did you choose them? Do you actually choose them? And then, as you say, well, if I don't, if I can really see, and I think the easiest way to do that is just choose for the next week, only choose joyful thoughts. Don't choose any other thought. So within half an hour, you'll have realised you don't choose your thoughts. But now, knowing that I don't choose my thoughts, what are the implications of that in my life? What are the implications? Now I'm thinking, that guy really annoyed me. Well, I didn't choose that. Do I have to act on it?
Yeah.
You know, it just has such an effect when you actually conduct those experiments and look at the implications, that the thing that you've believed your whole life actually isn't true. That you
Yeah.
don't choose your thoughts, you're not this body mind. The whole thing just kind of seems to collapse like a house of cards, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I
And that
mean,
takes you to the truth.
Jenny Sheehan just answered it freedom. It's total freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is total freedom. And it's coming to the point of trust that you find that it's available in every area of your life. Yeah, it's amazing. What did Rick say? Everything is consciousness, yet many teachings, Nisargadatta, etc., suggest that the absolute precedes this does that mean consciousness?
Consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A thorough examining of I or I am is a most viable path to take you beyond the I or I am. You will not find proof.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
This this not finding any proof is a form of proof itself. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's intuitive that sees and knows.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth said, beyond thought, perception, consciousness itself transcended to ultimate oneness. Yeah, it's knowing of being, and there's nothing to say.
God is, and we cease to speak.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to scoot out of here.
Okay.
This was awesome. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we'll see you next week for the second to the last book study. Rosalind O'Rourke will be our co-host, and you guys have an awesome new year. We'll see you next year.
Have
Right?
fun with the band,
Next
Bill.
year, right? Okay. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.